guys, thanks for joining us yet again for another episode of When That Ruled the World. This is a When That Ruled the World Again, where we're coming back and revisiting a subject we've already talked about. You may recall the very first When That Ruled the World was just me and Tom Fireheart talking about our earliest experiences with video games, and we kind of went into present day and stuff like that. But the main question that started the whole podcast was primarily, what was your first experience with a video game console? How did it start? And, did it not take, and just general memories about video games. So in probably the easiest way to revisit this, we're just grabbing folks that weren't there for that podcast. So tonight I am joined by Alanah Sees, NNTV Chris, and Samantha Maybe. And I'm just going to let them roundtable discuss video games and their history and where they are in their life now, and just have at it. And I'm going to sit here and eat a sandwich. Alanah, you're first up. You go right ahead.
All right. So my earliest memory of video games involved my uncles. I come from a rather large Mexican family, with really large uncles with lots of tattoos and gang connections. So it was interesting for me as a child to spend time with my uncles, in any capacity. But when I did, often they would play Resident Evil and Tomb Raider, were the games that I remember being a very, very small child and believing were real. I thought that Lara Croft was a real person, and I knew that if I ever walked down a dark hall, there would be evil zombie dogs coming to eat me. So, in terms of my first experience with a console or with gaming in general, I just remember being, maybe 4 or 5 and cuddled on a bed behind my uncles screaming at the television when they played Resident Evil. And I think that was when I was introduced to Tekken and other fighting games. And, I didn't play all that often, but I've always had the experience of watching video games being played. And, like, Sam can tell you that I used to watch her play Kingdom Hearts all the frickin' time. I used to watch my friends play any manner of games. And so I'm more of a game watcher as opposed to a game player. But I think that because of that, I haven't missed out on gaming culture, even though I'm not an avid gamer myself. But I guess that sums up my first experience with gaming.
My first experience with video games was, I was actually probably like 3 or 4, and my cousin, he had a Game Boy, and he had the Mario game, the original SNES Mario game, Super Mario Bros. Thing, and he used to let me play that all the time, and apparently I was a genius for 3 because I actually knew what I was doing. And I remember after that, I didn't really touch video games again until I was around 10, maybe, when I would go to my friend's house a lot, and he had everything. He had the PlayStation, he had the GameCube, he had the Xbox, he had the blah, blah, blah. And the games that we would always end up playing were Super Smash Brothers Melee, which he creamed me at all the time, but it was still fun as a mug. And actually, no, that's pretty much it. And Pokemon, a lot of Pokemon.
Uh-huh.
Of course, the games, my love of the games actually came after the show, so I don't really count that one.
All right,
Yeah.
well, I'm sorry, are you done, Chris?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Well, my first real experiences with gaming would probably have been on weekends when we would go to my grandmother's house. She literally lives a minute's walk away from my house. My brother and I would sit on her NES that she bought for us and just play whatever games she had found that week at random garage sales and such. So most of the time, it was me sitting there staring open-mouthed at the screen while my brother would play a game. Every once in a while, if it was a 2-player game, he would let me, touch a controller and try to figure things out, but I was very tiny, And I could not tell you the first video game I ever watched him play, I'm sure, but I spent the majority of my childhood sitting around watching my brother play video games. Um, I think the ones I liked the most, I always begged him to play Quest. I loved watching him play Quest. I couldn't tell you anything about the game now, but I know I loved it. Um, that, and I just remember him playing a lot of games with the Super Scope. That thing was cool. Um, my personal first console was my Game Boy Color, or maybe my Game Boy Pocket. I don't remember. I guess it would have been the Pocket, with my copy of my first Pokemon game, and then Pokemon Pinball and the Pokemon trading card game and Pokemon.
Pokemon forever.
But
I had to make a joke. I'm sorry.
but yeah, that was the majority of what I did when I was little. My brother and I would play video games together, or just I would get my dolls and he would get his action figures, and we'd come up with stories that were usually based on video games, and that was it. It's thanks to him that I'm into any of the video game franchises I'm into. Like Wild Arms is one of the big ones I remember from when I was little. Really falling in love with the music in those games. That and some of the Enders, all of them. Metal Gear. He was always playing Metal Gear. He still does. But I had similar experiences to Alanah, in that when he started playing survival horror games, I was scared out of my wits.
Yeah,
but I would
I'm
still
terrified.
sit there. Yeah, but I would still sit there and watch him play them. And Silent Hill is by far one of my favorite franchises. And that was the first time I really got into, like, really seriously into the storyline in a game. I would sit for hours reading all of the history of Silent Hill and the strategy guide for Silent Hill 3. And I couldn't tell you the history of that town forwards and backwards. I still know most of it, but I was obsessed.
I think the only time I've had, I don't know, I think that when, I was young, when we finally got an N64, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like magic now, because it was miraculous for us, because we were dirt poor to have any kind of console at all. And then, we got, a very, very old PS1 from one of my uncles after he was like, this is trash now. And so, things like that were kind of developed. And I think the only Pokemon game I ever actually played was Pokemon Snap, so you could give me all the judgment now. But
I love Pokemon
I was
Snap.
great at that game, let me tell you. I think that the first time I really got into a legitimate storyline of a game, like the first time I respected a video game, wasn't until I started playing Final Fantasy. And that was already in high school for me. Like I had been a book nerd more than a game person for a long time. And then one of my closest friends in high school was just like, what do you mean you don't know who Cloud is? And I was just like, I don't know. And so it was just like, here's a game. Don't do anything for the next week. And so at the time I wasn't allowed to have video games in the house. So I snuck his little PS1 into my house and Final Fantasy VII, and did nothing for 3 days but drown in that game. And it was just one of the best things ever, just to be like, oh my gosh, the relationships mean things, and the music is so good, and I feel for the characters, and kill everything. It was just great. And I think that was the first time that I really felt like, oh my gosh, I can connect to a story in a game in a way that I haven't before. And I don't think that after that I never really stuck with it with other games or pursuing other games, but I think that knowing that experience exists is why I have respect for gaming in general.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot to be said for, the fact that involving yourself in a video game story is, to me, if it's a good video game story, completely equivalent to drowning yourself in a fictional book
Yeah.
or
Completely.
and
Right.
any kind of fandom, a book, TV show, a movie, whatever. And in a lot of ways, video games to me are an even more inclusive experience than anything else because you get a visual component. In a way, you get to create a part of the world on your own. In some games, the characters, like, this is one thing my brother and I have been talking about lately, is that there are some games that make you feel like the character, and other games where you're very aware of the fact that the character is separate from you.
It's very
And
essential.
yeah, it's they have so much power to do a lot of different things. Because, in survival horror games, they want you to feel like you're in the game so they can terrify you even more. They don't want you to feel separated from people, which is one gripe I will make about the Dead Space franchise right now, is that
Oh, yeah.
I loved Dead Space 1. I can't play it because it terrifies me. I love it. I've seen the whole thing multiple times. Like Alanah, I'm also quite an avid game watcher, not player as much, but it's completely terrifying. But seeing Dead Space 2, I don't know if I'm just kind of jaded to the necromorphs or what it is, but it doesn't scare me at all. And it might be partially because of the fact that Isaac talks. I think that has a lot to do with it. That when he doesn't say a word, it's easier for you to feel like you're Isaac because you can be saying or thinking what he's thinking and feeling. But when he speaks himself, it definitely makes him feel like a completely separate entity. So, I don't know.
I'd heard about the situation with the more recent Dead Space game.
Mm-hmm.
I've never actually played any of those types of things myself. I do not have the nerve to go near them, so kudos to you guys on that. But I heard a comparison that originally it was more survival horror, and after the sequel and all that, it started becoming more action horror, like
Yes.
Alien or something. And,
Yes.
yeah. And I think that's one thing about it. When it's survival horror, you're supposed to feel like you're inside the game. You're going to be terrified. When it's action horror, it's like an action movie. You're not going to feel like you're inside it. It's going to be fun to mow down everything in sight, but it's not the same type of experience.
And if you go listen to like the Zero Punctuation reviews, he hates Dead Space, and he's very open about the fact that he hates it. But the reason he despises it so much is because he doesn't even feel that Dead Space 1 met the survival horror criteria. To him, it's too easy. Like, unless you play it on the super super difficult mode, there's no you hardly ever feel like you don't have enough ammo or you're constantly gonna die. It's easy to heal yourself and find more stuff most of the time. There are very few instances throughout Dead Space 1 and 2 where you feel like you're gonna die, but
legitimately without hope.
yes, the survival horror genre in general has been fading somewhat, which is sad.
Yeah, it's dying. I heard that too.
So if you would... I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you could pick the sort of, I know this might be hard for you, Alanah, but if you could pick the genre of games that you think you are drawn most toward, what would it be?
Okay. I'll let you go first.
Okay.
I know for me that I don't want to play a game unless I feel like I have access to a main character whose like story I have direct involvement in. So I'm really interested in any what was the word I'm looking for? In any like really strong role playing game. But the thing for me is that I don't want to play a game that exists in the real world. Like for me, I'm just not interested in dealing with the person who is firing a gun at a soldier or climbing a city building or blah blah blah. Like I'd much rather be involved in sword fights and you know monsters and a world that doesn't exist in our universe. Something where there's just this fantastic element of magic and access to things that maybe you're never going to experience in your lifetime. Because for me, it's just like, man, I'd much rather be dealing in a fantasy world in terms of this type of game um, than I would want to play, something like a first-person shooter. Um, I don't know. So I think for me, I don't even think that it would be in terms of genre that makes the game appeal to me. For me, what matters is who that main character is. Because, when I played Zelda for a while, it was just like, it was all about Link and who Link was and his experience in the world and how he related to it and what his journey meant to him. And I didn't really care about, much else other than like, who is Link? How does he feel about this now?
It kind of helps he doesn't talk.
Yeah,
yes. Yes. Again, the whole not talking thing makes it feel a lot more inclusive, in my opinion.
I mean, little sound effects here or there, like grunting if you get hurt, but actual speech can be.
That's a really
turns
good
into padding after a while.
Yeah, it's a really good point because it's not something that I think I would have drawn a connection to. When you are the only one who gets to voice a character, it feels so much more your own. So I think that's a really good observation you made, Sam.
Yeah, and it's like I mean the thing that made me think about it too was the Pokemon games. Because your character in a Pokemon game never speaks. So it's really easy for you to feel like, oh, I am this person going around the world catching Pokemon. This is awesome.
Indeed. Okay, so as far as the whole favorite genre thing, I'm actually kind of weird because none of my favorite video games are actually in my favorite genres. In fact, most of my favorite video games are Pokemon games. So my favorite genres are like Alanah said, like fantasy type things. I can do Skyrim and stuff like that. But I'm not biased against things like I like having games that give you choices and things to do rather than just making you follow that linear storyline just max like that. Like, if you're going to follow a linear storyline, have choices so I can play around with that storyline. Something like Mass Effect or something like, God, I always forget this one. The Marvel Ultimate Alliance games or something like those types of things where even if you have to follow a generally static story, you can manipulate the story and your actions impact the game, and it doesn't feel like you're just following the lines, so to speak, the rails. And I don't mind certain games where you follow rails. Like, I don't mind the Batman Arkham games, of course. In fact, I really love those games.
Right.
But in certain cases, certain instances, a world can be so expansive that you want to experience yourself, like a Skyrim game or a Mass Effect game. Those games are huge, as opposed to a much more compact game like Batman Arkham City, Arkham Asylum, where you're in a much more confined environment. So I feel like the bigger the game is, the more included you want to be. And I also like games that are just quirky little fun things like Sly Cooper and stuff. As far as genre goes, though, I would definitely go with, like, fantasy, sci-fi, crap like that.
Yeah. And I would definitely tend to agree where that's concerned. I definitely don't see the appeal of things like, Black Ops and all of that. You can keep Call of Duty far, far away from me. I want nothing to do with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just don't want that. I don't want that. One thing I thought of when Alanah was talking was the whole idea that first person shooters have kind of been marginalized to that kind of game, which isn't so true anymore. I mean, first person shooter style has been adapted by almost every genre of gaming at this point. It's just kind of a fixture, but it definitely did start out that way. Um, but it's one of those trends that's interesting to see how it's developed even within the past decade or so. I personally don't like first person shooters either, but that's just because I'm not good at them, and I acknowledge that fact.
Second that. Second
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, which is another reason I have difficulty with Dead Space. But I I definitely am drawn more towards fantasy kind of things. I started my first MMO a few months ago, Guild Wars 2,
And those
and
are awesome.
yeah, I became completely obsessed with it very, very quickly. I haven't touched it in a while now because of, this internet thing and my real job, but it's really fun. And aside from hearing people gripe on the game itself about things that aren't working and just complaining in general and being jerks, the game is great, but the community can sometimes suck.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, we've talked about that, Sam. We've talked about the Guild Wars 2 controversy specifically.
right.
Yeah, about codes of conduct and where you draw the line and who has the right to tell you what you can or can't say about your name, blah, blah, blah.
Right. If anyone listening didn't hear about things that happened with Guild Wars 2, uh, there were people that decided to make some really offensive names for their characters, and they were asked to leave the game. Well, they weren't really asked, they were booted from the game. Um, the same has happened to people who make racist comments or any kind of majorly derogatory comment in map chat. So people are really careful about how they talk and what they say, but um, you still see people with weird names. But I'm sure that's true of any MMO. And
Well,
it
it is, yeah.
seems like AreaNet maybe is just being a bit more sensitive for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe that's not true, but it's certainly been well publicized.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting though.
To piggyback off of the first person shooters thing, I'll just say this. I hate first person. And I am going to also say I'm not good at it, but that's not why I dislike it. I don't know. I don't even know why I dislike it, but that's not why. It's I heard that Skyrim was a first person game, and I really wanted to check that game out. When I heard that, I was like, no.
What game?
Learned that you could turn that off, so I was like, oh yeah, good to go there, yes.
Yeah.
And there was the whole Mass Effect thing, and people kept lying to me and saying that was first person, and I was like, what? Okay, that's a lie. I know that's a lie. So, and the funny thing about it is, I'm not good at first person shooters, except for the slower ones, and I still don't like those. My cousin brought over one of those one time, so he could show off and try to beat me at it. And I beat him without trying, and I have no idea how I did it to this day, and he's still upset with me over that. So it's that awkward thing you bring up with your family at Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
So fun to remind him of that. You got beat by a noob.
So, I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
I know, I can pinpoint really specific points where I was so struck by the artistry of a game or some kind of, plot element or character or design thing. And I want to know what to you was the most impressive artistic moment of, any game that you've played or, maybe a game trailer or something. I know for me, I'd been, I don't know, maybe, oh gosh, I'm trying to think about when this was. I'd been in college for like 3 years, maybe. I'm pretty sure this is like only a year ago, and I hadn't touched a video game in years because I was just so invested in the theater and drowning in work, work, work. But I was visiting my family for a holiday, and I was sitting with my brother, and we were watching TV, and he was playing a basketball game or something, and then we were watching TV, and this trailer came on that at first I thought was for a feature film, because of the way that the music sounded, and it was all in slow motion. It was for Dead Island, which is
Yeah.
the the article that came out was like the most zombie video game trailer you'll ever see, and I was like, what in the world is this? But I watched it, and I was just like, I was almost moved to tears by like 3-minute trailer for this video game, and I was just like, get the remote and let me see this 5 more times because I can't feel.
Dead Island.
It's a pity that game was nothing like the trailer.
Yeah, the game sucked.
Yeah, it sucked badly. And it was a first-person game.
Yeah, exactly. And
Oh, pity.
But the thing that struck me was that, the same respect that I have for like those first 5 minutes of Up is the same kind of respect I had for that trailer, where you don't have dialogue, you only have the idea of this music and emotion in a character's face, and so like that kind of artistry is something that I don't think I had to like learn to come to expect from any game, even just in trailer form, even if it didn't live up to it afterward. But like that's something that I'm always going to remember as being one of those moments where I was like, dang, this is art.
Yeah, the trailer was beautiful.
It was.
Yeah. It was great. I think for me, one of the moments in more recent history that made me stop and be like, "Whoa, what's happening in the video game world?" was I don't remember when it was, and it was a couple years ago, but I came home from college for a weekend or something, and my brother was playing Red Dead Redemption, and he was just on a horse running around the map, and I just stood there staring at the screen. Like, it was so gorgeous. Just it was really remarkably lifelike, and of course that world is pretty big, so there's just always a lot to look at, almost no matter where you are. And the majority of modern games kind of fall into the same artistic line as Red Dead, but that was one of the first times in the past 5 years or so when I really took a moment and was like, this looks amazing. And unfortunately, kids nowadays aren't going to have that. They'll be looking at 8-bit stuff and being like, oh, look at how like old it looks or whatever, but they don't get that that's the only option we had. I'm sure they do, but they'll never understand what it feels like to not have realistic looking games.
Yeah,
I came up on the edge of that, so I just barely avoided not being able to experience that feeling of whoa.
Right.
Because like I said, my first video games were Mario and Pokemon, and those were the only video games I had access to for ages. So after I started paying more attention to video games, and I'm only really a casual gamer. I'm not. I don't get into video games as heavily as pretty much 95% of the people around me. But I collect like cases for DVDs and games, and most of this case right in front of me is just game cases. And what I can see right here are the games that for a while did get me to just stop and go, wow. And a while ago we were in 8-bit stage, and it's like, I know none of these are exactly the most impressive things ever, and some of them I have already mentioned before. But as far as being expansive games, not visually striking or graphically awesome or anything, but the biggest game I have ever played has to fall into the Elder Scrolls category somewhere.
Okay,
They're massive perspective. And as far as making anatomically correct, somewhat human beings, I give that one to like the Batman Arkham series or the last Spider-Man game that just came out. Actually, is actually really graphically impressive compared to every other Spider-Man game ever in the history of the world. And a bunch of other. I mean, you could also go and say most Square Enix games. I don't play a lot of them, like Final Fantasy and all that. I think that's Square Enix.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, Final Fantasy.
Yes.
Those the graphics in those are phenomenal.
Right.
But
Square Enix
so
is just a
things like
problem.
that.
Square Enix is just becoming a problem for itself. Because a lot of people complain anymore that it seems like they just want to make animated movies and not video games.
Yeah.
And that certainly seems to be the case for the past couple of Final Fantasy games, where, you know, you have probably hours of just animated footage without gameplay. But they're not the only ones guilty of that. I think was Metal Gear 4, the last one that came out. There's like probably a good 4 hours of just movie scenes. So it's not just Square Enix, but they're kind of becoming known for doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, and what was the one type of game, like the games I love RPGs, don't get me wrong or anything.
Yeah.
But I'm insanely picky about RPGs that I play. I don't want to play an RPG just because it's a big name RPG or something.
Yeah.
Like when someone recommended Final Fantasy to me, I was like, are you giving this to me just because it's a big name? And he was like, no, it's a really good game. And I played it and I was like, yeah, this is good. And then I was like, okay, let's move on to something else now. And most of the RPG games I pick are actually the ones that are like in the background, at least compared to Final Fantasy and stuff like that, like Tales games, like Tales of Symphonia, Tales of the Abyss, all that.
Yes.
And I love those games. And
good.
they are good.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to pronounce this one. Disgaea, whatever, the
Disgaea.
And that.
Disgaea. Yeah. My brother loves those. They're so cute.
They are. They're
adorable.
They're dark.
Yeah.
They're really freaking dark, but they're yes. But yeah, as far as like RPGs, stuff like that goes, I love RPGs. I love them the best. But you're only going to see me playing an RPG every freaking blue moon.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, every purple moon. Blue is too common.
Yes.
Just be especially rare. Do you guys have any guilty pleasure games?
Oh yeah, I was just about to ask.
Oh dear Lord.
I was just about to ask if anyone has like specific emotions or times in their life when they feel really compelled to play games. And I know for me, if I'm ever really pissed off about something, I just need to play God of War. I have to do it. It makes me feel better about everything if I can just be Kratos and completely break everything in sight. It's just really satisfying. Other than that, in terms of like stereotypical semi-embarrassing guilty pleasure games, you know, I feel like things like, you know, the Nintendo classics, I don't really consider semi-embarrassing because everyone still loves them. They're classics for a reason, but I love to sit and play them. But also, you know, like Mario Party and Kingdom Hearts. I will never stop loving Kingdom Hearts. But that is one that is, you know, somewhat controversial. But I adore them.
I mean, for me, I can think of 3 specifically. I remember kind of like walking into Target and like looking around and then just like, I'm gonna secretly buy Luigi's Mansion now and nobody needs to know about it. But I loved Luigi's Mansion like you don't even understand. And so that's definitely a guilty pleasure one where I'm just like, this is just so cute and stupid and I love it. And that one, Super Mario Sunshine, is very the same similar feeling because I was just like, it's all so pretty. And
Yeah.
I can't handle it, and it's cute. And so I think that the small chibi girl inside of me was just very excited about Luigi's Mansion and Super Mario Sunshine. But other than that, the only thing that is really going to be guilty pleasure for me is Monkey Ball. I love Monkey Ball. I will always love Monkey Ball. It's just so much fun.
Bubble
It's
Bobble,
just
anyone?
I there's shame involved, but it's shame that's worthwhile because I loved Monkey Ball.
See. Okay, as far as guilty pleasure games goes, well, first of all, if I'm angry or something like that, then I'm most definitely going to pop a Pokemon game or a Kirby game in. But as far as games that are just kind of embarrassing, okay, let's see. Looking at the case here, I can think of a few. First of all, this one's for Sam, Lego Star Wars.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
There's a
Lego
game
games
that
are
I'm
awesome.
pretty sure I don't think anyone has ever heard of, Soccer Wars, and long friggin' subtitle. But the game is like, it's a guilty pleasure because that game is actually really well written in certain ways, and it's voice acted well for a number of characters. The game is A, incredibly cheesy, and B, it's almost girlish. It's like almost a girly game in a way. like, I'm like,
Why do you
I
say
don't.
that? What screams this is a girly game to you about it?
The fact that there's only 2 male main characters out of a cast of 13.
Oh my goodness.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But at the same time, those girls are boss in ways you would not
Yes.
believe. One of them is a
For sure.
friggin' samurai with a shotgun.
That's awesome.
How is that not awesome?
It is awesome.
And there's another, huh?
It is awesome.
It is awesome, exactly. There's another one who's Japanese, and she just owns everybody because she's a genius. And the story is broken down in a way that I actually really enjoy because first of all, it gives you those choices. It gives you dialogue choices and action choices, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And it's broken down into chapters. There are 11 or 12 chapters, I think. I think I'm way too far above it. But each chapter is about a different one of the characters, and then the last chapter is about the main character. And then after that, you get, like, it's an RPG-ish type thing, so you have, like, 5 boss battles in a row back-to-back that you can't do anything about. But, yeah. It's a fun game. It's cute. It's really, really cheesy. The cheese outdoes the girlish part of it by far, but it's a guilty pleasure. What can you say? I feel like if I brought that up at school, I'd be ridiculed until I graduate, but whatever. I don't really care what people think about me at this point. I'm on the internet.
And it's kind of an interesting thing to think about that there are games now that seem to be tailored towards either a male or female audience, and then you have some that try to kind of toe the line on both sides. When you were describing that game, I just keep thinking of Persona. I think it was Persona 4 that I'm thinking of specifically. It might be 3. One of them was the first Persona game that I ever was exposed to. I remember being completely shocked by people like shooting themselves in the head to unleash magical powers, but there's also like this simulation component to the game if you're unfamiliar with it, where you have to go to school and like answer questions correctly from your teachers and you gain charisma points and it's like you're playing The Sims. Just really
it's actually
strange. But I don't know if that's something that's more common in a lot of more Japanese-ish games, but
I think it is because
yeah,
the game that I was just describing actually does that, but it's not like a school answer questions, blah 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 type thing. The reason there are like 11 girls out of 13 characters is because the main character is by the end supposed to have like an arc with whichever one you have the most I don't even remember the word for it. Trust value points. I'm going to go with every generic word I can here until I can think of it. But, yeah, so whatever. It's incredibly girly by the end, but at the same time, one of the girls is a samurai with a shotgun. So I win.
Yep.
Yes,
Basically.
indeed.
Basically.
So I know that we've been talking pretty exclusively about console games, but Sam, you did mention briefly that you've recently gotten into MMOs. Prior to my being allowed on the internet when I was a child, I still played some games on PC that were like that. I'm kind of like, why did these exist? Can I still find them? Was I like for instance, I swear I used to have this game PC called Bible Man. I kid you not.
Oh, God.
I don't even know. Like
It
it was this man dressed in like purple and gold, like leather and a mask, and like you went through like it was like a labyrinth, and you fought creatures and demons and had to solve like Bible puzzles and stuff.
Oh my God.
I swear. And I remember this now, and I was just like, I hated this game, but I felt like I was not allowed to not play it because I was like, man, I love God and things. I guess I have to play this. But I hated that game so much. Oh my gosh. But I also played like the Goosebumps PC game, which was fantastic. I remember it now, and I'm just like, that was an awesome, awesome game. So I'm wondering if there's any games that you guys played on your computers that weren't, didn't necessarily acquire the internet, that were, on disc, CD-ROM, that you recall playing when you were younger.
Oh, yes. And they're very embarrassing.
Oh, tell. Sam, Bible Man. Sam.
Yeah.
Bible Man.
I don't know if I think, Alanah, we talked about these back in college, but I used to play Freddy Fish and
Me too, yes!
Pajama Sam and Putt Putt Goes to the Zoo. That one was great. Yeah, I used to just play them over and over and over again because you would get through the story in like an hour.
Oh man, Operation Neptune, Oregon Trail. Ugh.
Yeah. But I would also play these Barbie games. They were detective Barbie games. I had two of them. I only remember one really well. There was some mystery at a circus, and you had to solve it. And I would play that all the friggin' time. Yep.
I used to play a Carmen Sandiego game. Mm-hmm. That was pretty cool, but I think that's pretty much it. I did have a collection called Galaxy of Games that had a lot of like smaller arcade games put onto disc. So I played like Zeke the Geek and what was the name of the one where you had like a little Power Ranger looking dude, and he went through this like maze, and there was this boss that came out, and every time the boss came out, it was like this super computerized voice that was like, "You will die." It was just good. And like when you shot your gun, like some voices would say "guided missiles."
Oh my God.
Oh God.
Great.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. So, in a question of like your least favorite video games, for example, what might one of some of those be for you guys? Because I know as far as I go, I hate and both adore at the same time, like the classic Sonic the Hedgehog games, and the reason is because they are so friggin' hard.
Yes.
But they are so friggin' addictive, and they're fun, and I can't stop playing them whenever I start. But they're that hard that they make me hate them after I finally, lost every life.
Yeah.
Not like Mario, where you can slow down on a dime. Sonic you have to slide to a stop. If you slide to a stop in the Sonic game, you might run into something you don't want to. So, you guys, what's a video game or video game series, whatever, that you cannot stand?
That's a tough one because I feel like I've kind of been raised in an environment where I'm only exposed to games that I've been trained to think are good. So, I mean, aside from, like the Black Ops Call of Duty line of things, I really dislike Halo quite a bit.
Really?
Yeah, I don't like it. I'll play it. I'll play it, but I really don't like it. I don't have enough knowledge of the game as a series to say that. I'm perfectly aware of that fact, but I just in general I don't like Halo. Also going back to MMOs, I don't like World of Warcraft either. But again, it's not because I've played it and found things I disliked about it. I just dislike it on principle. So it's not entirely fair for me to say that, but
It's perfectly fair. You have an opinion. You're entitled to it.
I don't think that. I mean, I can think of plenty of lines of games that I don't particularly care for. Most of them sports oriented, because I'm
Yes,
sorry,
that too.
I don't care about Madden. I don't care about new 2K. I just
don't care about sports.
Exactly. I mean, I love watching basketball, but I don't want to pretend I'm watching basketball on a video game. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not something that appeals to me, but I don't actively dislike it. And I think that's the result of me having a brother that
There's a reason you play basketball.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, exactly. He does play basketball, and he's great at it. And so it's weird for me to see him go play video game basketball. I'm just like, what's the point of this? But, I don't actively hate it or can't stand it. I just don't particularly care for it. Honestly, the only thing that comes to mind, and I'm glad that I'm not in the actual presence of Sam, so she can't hurt me, but I cannot stand Kingdom Hearts. When I played and I listened to it played, it is incredibly difficult for me not to actively and consistently mock it. And it was so hard for me to sit and watch it because I love watching Sam play video games, if only because it's fun to see her be like bah, rah, rah, killing. But it was just so hard for me to I was like, is this really the story? Did they really just use that bit of dialogue? Look at his face. It makes no sense. Oh my gosh. And just kind of things that I was just like, can this
Sam would want to hurt me too.
And
I
don't
it's okay. No, I don't want to hurt you. It's all right. I understand that most people don't like it. And honestly, I am upset with the series in general right now because it seemed so much like there was going to be a third one, and now they just keep throwing out these filler games, and they're stupid, and I don't care about them. But it was a lot of fun the first time I played, and it was one of the first more large scale console games I ever played through entirely on my own. So I think because of that, it's kind of endeared to me. But I totally understand if people don't like it. So I'm not upset if you don't like it. It's irritating when someone's sitting there mocking you while you play it, Alanah.
Yes, I'm sorry. I tried really hard to keep my mouth shut.
But it's okay. I understand.
Yeah. Kingdom Hearts. It's not it's not the story. Well, it's not the stuff she was mentioning about it. Because when it came out, I was 8 or 9. Or
it was
barely,
cute.
I didn't care about that stuff at the time. I was dumb and just wanted to see stuff get blown up or slashed in half or blah blah blah. But now it's this is not as great as. Wow. And my friend, that was one of the games my friend had on his PlayStation 2, I think, or something. And I remember playing it with him, and I remember he was on this boss once, and he tricked me. He totally tricked me. He was like, dude, I look like the boss. And I was like, okay. And I died in 2 seconds. I was like, whoa, what? Huh? I was like, okay, mind blown. I hadn't died that fast. I took a level 5 into the Pokemon League once, and that level 5 lasted longer than I lasted fighting that boss in Kingdom Hearts. I do not like Kingdom Hearts, not just because it's difficult either, and not just because of I've grown out of it, like, because I don't grow out of Pokemon. I don't like it, mostly because of, like, how you don't like World of Warcraft on principle. I've only played the one game for a few minutes.
Right.
But after that, I was like, okay, I mean, I watched him play religiously, like, back then, again. I watched him play. He said it was slightly difficult, and then he said he lied and said he bumped down difficulty. I was too stupid to check. And, yeah, but it's mostly just a principle thing with me and Kingdom Hearts, and a lot of games I don't like on principle alone, but Kingdom Hearts is definitely a big one. Other games that I don't dislike them per se. I'm not a huge fan of, like, the Final Fantasy thing. Like, yeah, they're good, yeah, and they're animated movies for the most part, like you said. But well, now, but it's like back when they were out, I didn't care. Back when they were out and they kept getting recommended to me, I was like, I don't care. Like, I did not care. I wanted to see stuff get blown up. I wanted to see things get killed, mowed down around the land, and that was fulfilled. And then I started getting older, and my lack of ability to care just kind of grew, and it was like, yeah, now I don't care for other reasons. All right. I feel like if I'd been a little older when they started coming out and I was exposed to them when I was younger, I would have probably adopted a stronger appreciation of them than I have. They're milestones for RPGs, but...
Oh, yeah.
But
I mean,
as far
for
as,
me...
I was too young to really appreciate the intricacies and blah, 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 big words, blah, blah.
I think for me, when I think of Final Fantasy, I'm really thinking of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy Tactics. Like, those were the ones that I saw and was really like, hey, these are fun to watch. And I think I was too young as well when I saw them, which, I at least have 5 years on you, Chris. So, like, I completely understand you saying you may have been too young to really get it when they were popular. But I think they were some of the first ones that I saw and was like, hey, these are really cool. And even when I saw Final Fantasy VIII for the first time, I liked it, but I think I could already tell there was something not quite as good as FF7. So yeah, usually if I'm talking about a Final Fantasy game I like, it's those.
Yeah. I think that they kind of epitomize what we like about Final Fantasy in general. It's that 7 was the one that did everything right, and right down to the, you've got all this stuff happening, and then as opposed to having a ton of animated sequences and very little gameplay, you had just a movie that came afterward, and you were happy about that. And it's just like, oh, okay, this works for me. So yeah, I think that makes sense. That when you talk about Final Fantasy in general, more than likely you're referring directly to 7.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something about RPGs. Just a quickish question. It's never been completely and totally pissed off when there's a boss that you lose to and you don't realize until a little bit later that you were actually supposed to lose to them. So you go through the whole thing where you're about to, like, turn off the system, and then someone's like, wait. And then you look at the TV and you're like, oh. And your hand's like on the reset button, so you have to hold the reset button until someone can save. Otherwise, the game's going to shut off, and you have to go through that whole thing again.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the Toy Story 2 game for N64. Did anybody play that? Because that was a bomb game.
I tend to steer clear of movie adaptations, so...
Yeah.
I think we got it at a garage sale or something when I was younger. and it was just
Uh-huh.
like, oh, it just have this, and I completely forgot. I loved that game.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so weird.
But yeah, Chris, I always, whenever I'm in a boss fight or something that I'm finding particularly difficult, I always just say, well, maybe I'm supposed to lose, like in the back of my
Yeah.
head. And just kind of hope against hope that I'm supposed to be failing miserably. Usually I'm not, but
Uh,
but yes,
and that's
it
the one.
has
That's the other
that.
thing about those kinds of RPGs, like Tales of Symphonia. I have Tales of Symphonia 2, and that's the game that kind of like broke RPGs to me. Like I still love those games and stuff, but it's the level grinding thing, because Pokemon in and of itself is an RPG and a strategy game, blah blah, and level grinding in that is very 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 simple. And then you get to games like Tales, and you have to level grind for freaking years before you can actually take on certain bosses. And they play it up so certain bosses you're supposed to lose to, so you don't know when you're supposed to lose and when you're not. And in a game like, I remember the one boss I still have not beaten in Tales of Symphonia, and it's probably only halfway through the game. He's like level 100 plus something. I don't know how I can possibly get my level any higher if I tried. I can't do it. I can't. My attention span is not long enough to level grind for that long. A Pokemon game you can just put down and come back to later.
Absolutely.
This is a boss. So.
No, I had a similar experience when I played the first Kingdom Hearts game, because I played Kingdom Hearts 2 before I played Kingdom Hearts 1, and when I went through the first one, I was not leveled anywhere near enough to get through the end stages of the game, so I have never actually beaten it. I am stuck at the last or second to last fight with Ansem. I've never beaten him. And it's just
Yeah.
at a part where it's almost impossible to go back and level because everything is like, it's not too hard, but it would kill me really easily, and I just lose all my items, and I can't go get more. Blah. But yeah, it's that situation sucks.
Actually, where I am in this Tales game right now, I literally cannot go back no matter what I do. And what I have to do is, the level before that boss is crammed with a bunch of enemies, but they're all incredibly low level or weak or just give out ridiculously low experience.
That's
So
awful.
I'd have to sit there and spam beat on those for hours and hours and hours, probably days actually, and just to get up to that level that I need to be at. And as far as, like I said, the Disgaea games, as far as those go, can't you get up to like level 2,000 or something in those? Is there even a limit? I've never.
I have no idea.
I don't think I've ever scraped a 3-digit number in that game. I don't think I can either. It's the level grinding curve is so ridiculous. But yeah.
And like, I don't know about you, Chris, but I know for me, like the newest Pokemon game, I just got through the Elite Four, and now I have no desire to continue playing the game. Like, there's so much after game content. Like, the game is nowhere near over anymore after you beat the Elite Four. But I just don't care enough after that.
About the after game content. Are you
Yeah,
talking
like
about Black, 2, and White too?
Yes. And even with the like 2 or maybe even 3 prior games, it was the same way, and I would just beat the Elite Four and stop.
I was like that with the Pokemon games that came out. That really started becoming a big thing after the Hoenn region, and I mean it was there in Fire Red and Leaf Green, but it was played down a little. You really only had the tower and just extra Pokemon to pick up. When you got to Emerald, actually, they threw the Battle Frontier at you, and you were like, oh, okay, something else I can do. And I feel like if they had made it so that that was like beating another part of the game instead of just, oh yeah, I can do this now, then that might be some sort of incentive to do it,
Yeah.
but it's not. And you don't level up in those battle facilities at all. You just kind of sit there and you're like,
Right.
oh, this is awkward. I fought in that battle dome some 100-odd times. I have never gotten the amount of wins necessary to beat that dude or find that dude.
That's horrible.
It's virtually impossible because
Yeah.
the game knows all the Pokemon combinations that work. It knows the Blissey Skarmory. It knows all those things, the Tyrannitars and the blah, and it knows how to use them. And when you're a dumb trainer who doesn't do the tournaments, like the legitimate tournaments in the world stuff, and you're just a casual, like you're a player like any other typical person would be, then you're going to be like, how do I do this? It's not like the Elite Four, because they specifically build it so you can beat the Elite Four. You're not supposed to beat these other people. I've only beaten one of them in all of the games. So there was Emerald, and then there were all the Sinnoh games, and now there's Unova. And as far as Unova goes, I don't have Black 2 and White 2 yet. Please don't spoil it for me, by the way. I don't have it yet. I will get it, but money. So I have no desire to play the after-game content unless they decide to make it so, and they're not going to, so that it's actually like beating another part of the game or something.
Yeah.
How many people have ever wondered that, it might be cool if they made like a sandbox-style RPG Pokemon game just once.
Yeah.
Not like Mystery Dungeon or anything like that, but like the standard way, but sandbox RPG style, like, yeah. I think that could be, because you get to actually control the Pokemon instead of just selecting moves. I love selecting moves, but I want to get to control a Pikachu.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Over the place. That'd be epic.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've always just had this strange desire to see in a Pokemon game, call me crazy, I want to see the actual Pokemon League tournament, like from the show, instead of having to do the Elite Four every single freaking time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a problem with the Elite Four, but come on, throw me a bone here. It's tiring.
Are there any last minute things that are burning into your heart and soul that we haven't addressed yet? Anything that you're like, well, I want to bring this up because I forgot earlier?
Oh, Sam, you mentioned earlier how you avoid movie licensed games at all costs.
Generally speaking, yes.
Generally speaking, I will say that I don't disagree with you on that decision.
There are exceptions.
There are quite a couple of exceptions, not a lot, but a couple. I very unfortunately didn't get that message for a while. So what ended up happening was I started getting these movie games, and when I was younger again, I did not care.
Right.
But after a while, I started to realize, okay, these are starting to suck. And then the last movie game I got wasn't actually a movie game, and it was the Amazing Spider-Man game. And in a sense, it's like the Amazing Spider-Man 1.5 because it's not the same plot as the movie. It's a sequel-ish type thing.
Yeah.
So that game is actually impressive for a, quote, movie licensed game.
Huh.
So that's pretty much all I wanted to throw in. Movie licensed games, while by and large aren't that great, they do have their little gems.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, we have to acknowledge the fact that the majority of the Lego games are fantastic and movie licensed games. So, the normal Harry Potter games suck. The ones
Never
that I've
touched them.
played are awful. I've only played maybe one or two, but they were all the same basic construction. Like, you get a mission, you walk through the castle, you do it, you go back to where you started, and that's the entire game. But
And go play Lego Harry Potter, and
yeah, Lego Harry Potter I enjoyed. It was kind of the same thing, but just seeing the characters in Lego form was enough to keep me entertained that I didn't mind.
Lego games have
Lego
a sense of
games
humor about them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They know they're Lego games, and they joke about the fact that they're Lego games, and
Right.
now Lego games are actually starting to talk and stuff. But
Which is so weird.
it's very weird. I played that Lego Batman 2 thing, and I was like,
Yeah.
wait, they're speaking now?
Yeah, but it was good, right?
Witchcraft is this?
It was good though. I really liked the Batman one.
It was
It was
good,
great.
but I was like, oh, well, this is new.
The story was
really
arguably weird, but the game was really fun.
Yeah. Dude, all those DC superheroes, like, come on.
Yeah,
Kind
was
of
great.
peak here. Yeah.
Jimmy, do you want to take us out? Should we take ourselves out?
Are you still eating that sandwich?
I don't think he can hear us.
I don't think so. So this has been When That Ruled the World video games revisited from thatruled.com. Jimmy was here. I'm Alanah Sees.
I'm Samantha Maybe.
And I am NNTV. Farewell, everybody. Good night.
Godspeed.
Well, now then. Well, this is awkward.